Right, we are back and live. We started doing these panel discussion sessions a few years back and discovered they were a huge hit. And so I'm going to do my very best to not, chime in with all my own personal stories because it's you that people want to hear from. So we have with us for this session Philip Licht with Set Free Alaska, and then Stephen Napier with Global Outreach. I got it right.
Very good. That's impressive.
Whew. I just know that I love Stephen. He's doing awesome work. I wasn't sure on the name of the organization, but and then Dave Tigan with Kingdom Alliance. I was going to say Amazon Outreach because you partner with them, but it's Kingdom Alliance. And just so you know, especially for Alaskan men, I love what you do because if you can show up and work hard, they can join your mission and building churches in the remote places on the Amazon, and then seeing pastors placed in those churches in partnership with Amazon Outreach and MEPI and others. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being willing to do this. So let's get rolling here. First question, we're going to start with you, Philip. Describe something that you felt that the Lord led you to start, but it didn't end up the way you thought it was going to go.
Well, the topic of failure is one that I'm well versed in, and so there's a quote that I like. John Maxwell says, "If you're going to fall forward. Pick something up while you're down there." And I have just many instances of this question. One that comes to mind when just recently we have been in 3 elementary schools here in our community, Set Free Alaska, ministering to kiddos, behavioral health, trauma issues, and when we really launched into the schools, we thought it was going to expand, and we would start with 1, which we did, and to 2, and to 3, and eventually, 15, 20, and really saturate the elementary schools in our community. And we have seen such an increase in the need of children in our program at our office because so many kids have transitioned to homeschool. And we've had a struggle keeping good qualified clinicians that can go into the school. And so we just recently had to make a decision to pull out of those schools and reallocate the resource to our outpatient services at our clinic here in Mat-Su. And so that was a difficult thing to do and decide and realize, like, boy, we're actually going backwards in what I was thinking is we would expand and be in all the schools. Now we're only in 0 schools, and so that was not what I had intended on happening for sure, but we have a lot of resources that we're able to now reallocate to all these children who are coming to our office instead, so we're seeing the fruit of that, but difficult walking through those kind of challenges when they don't happen the way you thought they were going to.
Right. Stephen, same question for you. Something you felt like the Lord led you into, and then it did not turn out the way that you thought it was going to turn out.
Yeah, sure. Right off the top of my head, I think of our plan there with our church planning and our school planning in Africa is the self-sustaining model, and so that means you start businesses, right? You have to do something to generate income, and you don't teach too much of that in seminary. So we went around and tried to learn and try to figure out what is that generates income in these environments, and so we started a business with this village, utter failure, the first one. Started a business over here, really our first 3 or 4 simply did not work. Some were simply asking the wrong people advice, asking the wrong people questions. And so we learned a lot about that. Who really knows what to do? For instance, we learned you don't start a pig farm in a Muslim village, Some things seem self-evident, but we were slow learners. But here was one of the joys about that was, the whole time you're discipling guys and walking through those failures together. How do you navigate it when those things don't happen? And with guys you're leading, when they look at you and they say, that was a dumb idea. But walking through that together, and eventually seeing how God's just teaching you so much through all the times you just really messed up.
I remember being with you in Uganda and hearing how you sort of landed on the model that you landed on for how much of the funding needs to come from the individual or from the local church, and how much of it you will invest, from Western funds, so to speak, so that this dependency wasn't created. I remember visiting a restaurant that a former youth pastor was starting up, and just seeing the ability to, as you described it, right, falling forward and picking something up when you get back up, right? That learning how to invest in a way, to lead in a way that often takes things that were good ideas, maybe not pig farms in Muslim communities, but good ideas,
Right.
and then bringing them to a place where they're actually sustainable.
Right,
And,
yeah.
it's good stuff. All right, Dave, what about you?
Well, I don't know if if it really didn't end well, but because I think it's still ongoing. But back in 2014, one of my trips to Peru, we took kind of a side trip up in the mountains, and we visited with some friends up there, and we visited an orphanage there that really touched my heart, and I just felt like God telling me that I needed to spend more time down here. I need to spend more time in Peru doing his work there. When I got back to the States, went back to work, the Lord just kept really kept putting in my heart that I need to spend more time there. So long story short, I quit my job, sold my home, so I was literally jobless, homeless, and living on the streets. Because I bought a camper that I was living in, actually on the streets. You know, God didn't open the doors like I thought he would for me to go down there. I have spent a lot more time down there, and I've been pretty much, full-time working in missions, working in Peru since then. But it didn't turn out exactly the way that I had envisioned. But God had other plans, and he's been working mightily, and he's been doing some amazing things through Kingdom Alliance. You know, I've been gotten a lot more involved there, and we're just keep moving on.
I think about the saying, it's impossible to steer a ship that isn't moving, and I think often what I find, at least in my own life, is that that willingness to take a step, even in the lack of full understanding and knowledge of what it all looks like at the end. I think the Lord is often in the redeeming business, right? He's taking our willingness to take action and then forming it and shaping it, and it frequently doesn't look exactly like, maybe rarely looks exactly like what we thought it was going to in the beginning. All right, next question. I'm going to start with you, Stephen. I'm assuming you've had moments that you wanted to quit what you're currently doing. How did you overcome that hurdle? And if that moment's right now, you don't have to.
Sorry. No, yeah, I don't know if it got to that place, but here's what I see so often in ministry is there's just those times of disappointment. Specifically, I think when you've poured a lot into a certain leader or a certain relationship that you just know that this is going to be the one, and I can, specific faces immediately come to mind, of one there in East Africa, a guy just pouring into him, and he raised to leadership levels, even to the place where he's been trusted with finances, and then, and he just disappears, and your heart just breaks. In the Middle East, this one guy, we know, obviously, discipleship evangelism takes a long time in the Middle East, but, I remember this one guy that just amazing conversations going down the road to discovering who Jesus is in his life. And, and after about a year and a half, as more and more things started happening in the background through back channels, we found out that, for quite a while, he simply was a secret informant against us with the government. And, and you just knew this was the one that, that he was on the edge of trusting in Christ. And it's just that disappointment. And I think the thing that drives us is constantly remember, as passionate as God gives us about whatever our vision is, about that person or about that drive, is that overall the purpose is to bring fame to his name. Overall, the purpose is to bring glory to God. You look back in Ezekiel, look back in 2 Samuel, and so many of the great miracles that we think, oh, that was so great for that person or for that person, Scripture is very clear. It was done to lift up his name. Yeah. It was done for his glory. And so in those times where I think those disappointment times, I just can't believe that just happened, refocus, grab on the vision. The point is fame to his name, his glory. That's the point. Yeah. And that pushes you through those disappointments.
It's really interesting to me that you bring up the relational aspect, right? Internally, what's happening inside of your work. I would say for myself, those are the moments that I find the most challenging. I've invested here. I had high hopes for here. I believed for this person and what they were going to do in those moments of disappointment. And the Lord just, even recently, coming back to me and saying, why are you doing this? Right? Are you willing to invest your heart again? Are you willing to have your heart broken again, to be disappointed again? If you're not, then ministry probably isn't the place for you, because it's part and parcel with working with people, ourselves included, right? That's good. Dave, a moment you felt like, man, I don't think I can keep doing this, and how did you get past that moment?
I don't think I've ever been to that point where I really wanted to quit. You know, I knew that I was where God wanted me. There was a lot of frustrating moments, and there still is just about every time. You know, when you get to the village where you're supposed to be building a church and materials aren't there, they said they would be there. The help's not there. There's always frustrating times, but you just work through them. There's a couple of years ago, we went down to the Three Frontiers area near Brazil. We were down there, all ready to start construction the next morning. We're sitting at dinner that night, and the pastor in charge said, "Oh, by the way, the site where this next church is going to be built is under a meter of water." And I just about lost it. I came. This is not acceptable. We can't build a church here. How are we going to do this? You know, on and on. He just looked at me and said, "It's for the gospel, brother." And we worked through it. It turned out great. We got the church built, and we moved on. Ever since then, every time I see him, it's for the gospel, brother. So, but yeah, there's always challenging times. You just work through them. As long as you know that you're in God's will, you just keep going.
Yeah, it's that sense of certainty that even in spite of the challenges, I know this was what the Lord called me to. I think the message David Pepper brought this past Sunday morning, it ain't Rome yet, baby, right? That Paul knows this is not the last stop on the journey, because I've got this mission, this mandate, this calling that the gospel's to be preached in Rome.
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases lately is sometimes you just have to be willing.
That's good. Philip, same question to you, and I think specifically about recently the movement towards Set Free launching in Homer, which is a community I love and have been a part of for many years, but there are a lot of people with a lot of opinions there. So a moment for you, though, where you felt like, I don't know if I can keep pushing forward with this.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing, a lot of the issues that we have that are the most difficult, having to do with people, relationships, whether internally or externally. And leadership would be easy if it wasn't for the people, and
including us.
Yeah, that's right. Homer is a great example. We felt that we had a clear word from the Lord to go to Homer. And getting back to the last question, I don't think we ever expect, we get the word from the Lord and everything's just going to continue to go like this until we achieve that which the Lord hath spoken to us.
Glory to glory.
That's right. I think this was never the picture that first comes to our mind, and the pitfalls and the sharks and lasers and the sharks with lasers in the journey, And so Homer was a great example of that. We prayed, we felt as the Lord led us, we launched in, and then we just started to experience so much resistance. One location fell through. We withdrew because of lawsuits towards the city and permitting issues, and then we went into another neighborhood that seemed like it was going to be great, and that turned into like a pitchfork and torch, literally attacking me personally. I mean, very, very harmful. And all the while, here's the interesting part, we had a word from the Lord about it was a white house with dormers. We had looked all over Homer for a white house with dormers. We had several different words that led us to search for a white house with dormers. And we had found a yellow house with dormers, but it just didn't work out. It didn't seem like the right place. And we thought, well, it is. We might have missed it. We're just doing our best along the journey. And when everything else fell through, we showed up at the initial house that was yellow, and within the last 2 weeks, they had painted it white. And so now it was a white house with dormers. And I'm like, Lord, didn't you see me almost get lynched like 2 weeks ago? It would have been nice if you would have just said yellow house with dormers to begin with. That would have been kind of nice. I wouldn't have had to go through all that. You know, oftentimes I think the Lord, and this is one of, getting to the point of the question, reminding ourselves that the Lord cares about us and he cares about what we're learning in the journey as much, if maybe not more. What he's doing in us is as important to him as what he's accomplishing through us.
Yeah.
And reminding ourselves that he is good, he is loving, he's not going to allow us to go through anything that we can't handle. If things happen that are out of our control or not according to his blessing or will even for us, that people are doing to us, he's going to bring good out of it. And I found oftentimes in those times when I am frustrated or disappointed, or I've never gone to the point of wanting to quit, because it's the word, as was mentioned, the word, the vision that sustains through. But taking a step back and realizing I'm a little too focused on myself right now is probably why I'm so frustrated and disappointed, and getting my eyes off of the navel gazing, fixing my eyes upon the Lord, reminding myself that he cares about me, that he's good, he's doing something in me that I might not like or be happy about at the time, but it's going to be good in the end if I trust in him. Yeah. And then I'll say one more thing, surrounding myself with people who are not going to focus on the negative or be the complainers or kind of join me in my pity party if I happen to be having one. I send out the invitation and they say, sorry, we're not coming. We're going to throw a different kind of party for you right now. Those kind of good influences, the counsel that will speak truth into my heart, encourage me, strengthen me, build me up in the Lord, those are so crucial going through difficult times.
Yeah. I had a similar moment years ago, and the phrase the Lord brought to me was, he never wastes time. Because my question was, why is this taking so long? Why isn't it being fulfilled? Why are you wasting my time? Was literally the question I was asking of the Lord. And his response so clearly was, I never waste time. It's a precious commodity to him because he utilizes it to bring about transformation in us. And maybe for you, it's God's not colorblind, right? He knows the difference between yellow and white, and it's a matter of timing, and he's doing something in you in that same time. That's a good word. All right, last question. I think often people are wondering this. I found for myself, I'm guessing for many of you, I've heard about pastors and leaders out there who feel like it's been a great reprieve and time with their family during COVID. I've found it's roughly 10 times the amount of work that it was pre-COVID to figure out how to do things in a brand new way. But how has the COVID shutdown affected you, and how has the mission moved forward in the midst of all of that? And Dave, we'll start with you for this one.
I like to think of it more as a COVID slowdown, because it is still moving forward. It hasn't been completely shut down. But, from the very beginning, I just had something in my mind just kept telling me that God's working through this. He's got a perfect plan. And I just want to be available and there, ready, willing, and able when he asked me to do something. But we are still moving forward. We weren't able to go build churches in August like we had planned to, but we were able to send some financial help down for some of the pastors and our friends in Peru that were struggling because they couldn't work, they couldn't feed their families, so we helped them out in that way. We had our tickets ready to go to Africa to visit a church there that we've been in contact with to help them get a church building started. We had to cancel that trip, but we were able to send some funds over, and they're getting the church building. It's almost completely done now, which is fantastic. I look forward to things opening up again when we can go down there and see what they're doing there. But yeah, we are still moving forward. We're making plans to go back in January, back down to actually Brazil, build 3 more churches. So we are still moving forward.
Right on. Philip, same question.
You know, I assume, like most of the ministries around this time of year, we're praying and strategizing and thinking about our next year. And we really start with this question, God, what are you speaking? What are you leading us into? And this last year, 2019, coming into 2020, we had a clear word confirmed, 4 or 5 different times and ways about increased favor, exponential growth, expansion in 2020. So we hit March, and immediately when things started ramping up with COVID, we saw a 20-30% decrease in people coming in because things were just shutting down. We're emergency type service, so we were able to stay open, but it just immediately people just stopped coming. And we're scrambling, figuring out plans and how to move forward. And I'm honestly, my faith was wavering at that point. We had this clear word, a promise from the Lord for this year, and everything I could see in the natural was opposite of that. And I'm thinking, we must have missed it. And completely outside of my own faith, this is great, because I was literally thinking we missed it. It's not like I was holding on to this promise, I just confess. I was completely giving up, thinking we missed it. And in spite of that, the Lord just came through incredibly. And we started this year with 46 paid employees. We've got 77 now. If we can get into the prisons, like we got 4 contracts to get in with DOC. Wow. As soon as they open it up, we'll just about have doubled this year in 2020. The Lord was faithful to his word in spite of COVID. Now, it's incredible. I'll tell you one thing that we did do that was intentional. So we recognized that in the midst of crisis, we've got to get out of the emotional space, especially fear. Fear and emotion will keep us from thinking creatively and innovatively and believing and trusting in God and moving into the future. And we've got to get out of the space of just putting out fires. So if we're just emotional and we're putting out fires, it's going to be hard to advance. You have to put out fires so the buildings don't burn down. But if you spend all the time doing that, And so we started to think creatively, like, what are the opportunities before us right now in the midst of COVID? There's needs out there. There's opportunities. We have some of these things like Homer and DOC were already in motion, but we found an opportunity. The state was having trouble getting people into congregant living settings because of the COVID protocols. And correspondingly, the programs their census were dropping, which is putting them at risk of viability and having to shut down, which would even amplify the problem. So I think just through a word of wisdom and knowledge from the Lord, we developed in 3 days, pitched, and moved this program all the way up the chain of the state and had it fully funded in 3 days' time, which is unheard of in the bureaucracy of a typical government situation. And we launched that program within a week. And so that we've gotten over $1 million just from that program, which we've been able to house, feed, and then provide quarantine for people, getting them to that next level, which we were able to divert some of our other staffing and resource to that in a program that was really not having as many people come. So it was a huge blessing, but we were being intentional in that time as well of thinking, okay, there's major transference of wealth in times of crisis. There's major opportunities, but we got to get out of the emotion and we got to get out of the putting out the fires and start thinking creatively.
That's really good, yeah, because once you get stuck in that negative pathway, the woe is me, this is what's going to happen, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point, right? That's good. All right, Stephen, last one.
All right, yeah, crazy busy, exciting. You've been there. We're always putting out new pastors from these schools. New churches are being planted everywhere, and so often they're so young that, you're like, go for it. But in the back of your mind, you're like, what's going to happen out there? And then this year when, the schools shut down, but what also shut down was most of the shipments from World Health, most shipments from UN to all the camps and all the war zones. Add to that, the Nile River had the largest flood stage in 50 years. Locusts came through. If it could happen, it happened this year. And it was an amazing opportunity to watch our pastors rise to the occasion. Providing food and medical resources. We had the only license in one region this may sound morbid, but to pick up those who have died. They were just sitting in homes. Because no one was allowed to do that transport. The church, these local village churches picked that up. and delivering food. And one of the most exciting things is, as you know, we want this self-sustainability. We want to see this going long term. So didn't want to get into this pattern of handing out food. So what we were able to do is enlarge almost all of our school farms. So that way you're giving people the dignity of work. You want food for your family? Come on, hop on the truck. And it was just an amazing thing to watch our school farms grow for the longevity of those ministries, but to give people on the edge of these war zones, in the midst of everything going else, the ability to provide for their own families. And who's spearheading all this from a visible area? It's these little local churches that are brand new across this region. And I guess it kind of culminates just a few weeks ago when the churches finally did open. One family there at Ojiambo's church that you've been to, one family comes forward, and they've never been there before. They're of the Islamic group there. And the family brought the husband, the wife, and all the children. And they said, we had to come and see you because we'd gone without food for 2 days at that point. When our children cry, we give them more tea. That's all we have. Until this church came and brought us food. Now that we can come out, we've got to figure out what this is all about. So what we've seen is opportunity after opportunity for the church to rise to the occasion. And I believe the church has. Church has stepped up.
That's really good, because one of the things I felt this strong conviction that the Lord is doing in this time where Westerners can't travel and see and participate is that what we're going to discover is that it's actually the Holy Spirit who's at work, right? It's Jesus' church, and he's building it. And so in Africa, the church is getting built, even though you're not there putting in nails, right? And in Africa, the church is growing and meeting the needs in the communities around them in our absence, right? And it's actually a value we've said we've had for a long time in the church, right? Raising up indigenous, but now because we're removed from the equation, we actually get to see it functioning. And I think we're going to discover that the church expands much more rapidly, often in our absence, right? Hey, thank you so much for being willing to take the time. We're going to take just a brief break, and then we're going to be back with our next session. But hey, thanks for joining us online, and we hope this is ministering to you directly. You'll also be able to go back and watch the sessions later on Facebook and then also on our online platform. So, hey, we're going to take a brief break. We'll be back in just a few moments. God bless you guys.